Well, howdy do. Okay, so here's how the video is gonna go. It's broken up into a couple different distinct parts because my perfectionist A-type ass needed to make this make sense, okay? Alright, so point number one, funding for the trip. Well, it all boils down to finesse, access, and opportunity. In undergrad, Asian studies was one of my majors, and I focused on a lot of countries in Asia, but mostly on China. And because I was an Asian studies major, I was able to apply for the Asian Studies Winter Travel Grant. So I essentially created a research proposal, I sent it into the department, and they approved it, and they gave me like a couple $1,000s to pursue that work. In addition to the Asian Studies Winter Travel Grant that I got, I was able to apply for a few other grants through my university and the specific college that I was in that also helped to fund the experience. So where did we go while we were in Beijing and Seoul? Just as a preface, all of the videos and photos that I'm gonna pop up on the screen, they were taken on my iPhone because I didn't have this camera at the time, so they're not gonna be like the same quality as what you're seeing right now. Also, my chair is so squeaky.
I'm like sitting on the edge of it so that it doesn't make noise.
Don't move.
So a couple of the main places that we went while we were in Beijing include the Summer Palace. We went to the Great Wall of China, specifically Badaling, which is like the most common touristy area of it, but it was the easiest to get to, so that's what we went for. We also went to the Forbidden City. We went to Tiananmen Square, the art district, as well as the National Museum of China. There were definitely other places that we went to in addition to these spots, but I feel like these are sort of like the main, like major touristy locations that we went to.
Okay, so I've been kind of nervous to say all the names and stuff of where we went when we were in Seoul because
I know I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation. My best friend who I went with, her name is Nina, and she like actually studies Korean, speaks Korean, and she roasted me so much for like my poor pronunciation of these terms, so
I'm gonna butcher them. I'm sorry.
So in Seoul, we went to the Seoul Tower, to the Bukchon Hanok Village. Oh god. Gyeongbokgun Palace. I know I said that wrong. I'm sorry, Nina. I'm sorry. We went to Myeongdong a lot because our hotel was really close to that shopping area, so that was really easy, really convenient. We went there to eat and shop all the time. And while we were in Myeongdong, we went to a cat cafe, which was a beautiful experience. And we met this beautiful Sphinx cat baby that was wearing like this little sweater thingy. She was so cute. We went to Hongdae to go clubbing a couple times. We also went to Yonsei University's like shopping area around it. We had a meal over there. We went shopping over there, which was really fun. And we went to Namdaemun Market. So what kind of research did we do while we were there? So it's funny because both Nina and I applied for that travel grant from Asian Studies, and we both got it. And we were working on different projects. So the reason that we were able to travel together is because I applied for funding to do a research project in Beijing, and she applied for funding to do a research project in Seoul. And neither one of us wanted to travel like by ourselves, so we just turned it into a 3-week like epic trip where we were both able to do our work, but also like traveling and having fun and, you know, not being alone. So Nina's research project was basically about performances of blackness in clubbing spaces. Honestly, that research topic was kind of a finesse because we were able to go like to all these clubs in Seoul and say it was research. And it was, but we were also like,
You know, throwing that ass in a circle and having a good time.
but it was work. You know what I mean? It was, well, finesse. She was really interested in the ways that people perform blackness in spaces where there aren't a lot of black people. And then my research project was very much related to this larger schema of research that I do. I generally research Afro-Asia, which I understand to be the study of historical intersections between African and Asian descendant peoples. In my proposal, I basically articulated an interest in the experiences of African students who are going to Chinese universities. So with the One Belt Road Initiative, which essentially has created more economic and social exchange exchange between China and countries in Africa, there has been also this increase in influx of African students going to schools in China. So I wanted to speak to an African student going to a Chinese university to learn more about these experiences firsthand through a research method known as ethnography, which is essentially just like connecting with people person to person and using interpersonal dialogue and experiences as a form of valid historical archive. I emailed the president of the Peking University African Student Association. Peking University is essentially just like a very prestigious university in China, and they have the student club. I reached out to Hassan, who is the president of that club, and he miraculously got back to me, even though I was just some random person like emailing him multiple times to try and like talk to him. And we were able to organize an in-person meetup. But we had such a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I learned so much from him. Two of the major takeaways that I had from that research experience was, one, African students who are going to Chinese universities now are really some of the first like African people to be in these academic spaces. So they really are on the front end of this burgeoning relationship between different countries in Africa and China. And something else that I learned is that with that comes this burden of having to educate. Because there aren't that many African people in China, there is a lot of ignorance towards the experience of Black and African people, and Hassan was definitely telling me like they've had to do a lot of educating, a lot of like dialoguing to sort of work through all of those, you know, ignorances and misunderstandings and things like that. Something else that I was thinking about a lot in the wake of this conversation was just how different our experiences are. For me being someone who's Black American versus him being someone who's African. He grew up in Uganda, he went to undergrad in Uganda. So it's quite interesting to see how Blackness and Africanness manifest themselves differently in different contexts. Next on the agenda is how are we perceived, my friend and I, as two Black girls, two multiracial Black girls navigating East Asia. So for a little bit of context, we are both multiracial. So Nina is Cameroonian and German, and I am Black American and Jewish. So, you know, we're both like quote unquote light-skinned. I don't really like that word. We have light complexions, lighter complexions. So obviously that comes with like a lot of privileges in terms of how we're perceived and how we're able to move and navigate through the world. That being said, we definitely experience like a lot of hyper visibility, especially being in Beijing, not so much in Seoul. The first week in Beijing was so jarring because literally everywhere we went, people would like stare, and they were not ashamed of it. Like they were not stealing a glance. No, they would just be up in your face like. So at first that made us really, really uncomfortable because not only are we like multiracial people in this context where there aren't a lot of folks like us, but we're also women. But as time went on, we definitely got used to it. And overall, like no one was disrespectful. I think literally in the entire time that we were in Beijing for 2 weeks, like 2.5 weeks, we saw 2 other Black people and or African people.
Two in 2 weeks.
So Nina and I were at a mall. We were in this shop. I don't remember what shop, but we were in the shop. We're walking around and this nice saleswoman comes up to me and she's basically like, and I was like, okay, cool. And so, you know, we're walking around and she comes up to my friend Nina. Mind you, I speak a little bit of Mandarin, but Nina doesn't speak any Mandarin. So this woman comes up to Nina and just starts touching her hair out of the blue. And she's speaking to me in Mandarin saying like, oh my God, she got her hair like this. Like, wow, it's so beautiful. And Nina is so confused. She's just standing there like,
Literally, like, why is this woman touching me?
she was very sweet. It was nothing like mean or abrasive, but obviously in an American context, like touching a Black woman's hair without her explicit consent is a big like no-no. And then when we were near Tiananmen Square, we were walking to this like underpass to go somewhere. I think we were going to get a meal or going to watch a show or something. And as we were walking, these 2 guys like come up to us and they have a camera and they just pointed it and then they pointed us and they're like, oh, and we were like, okay, I guess. So some random dude in Beijing has a photo of Nina and I standing next to him. When we went to the Great Wall, we were walking, trying to go to the highest point. And as we were walking, this, I don't know if they were a couple or a family, and they pointed to Nina and then pointed to their camera. And Nina is very nice, so she was like, okay. And it wasn't the sort of thing where the woman who took the photo with her was like this, or just standing next to her. No, she was like this. She was all up on Nina, like in her personal space. And Nina was so uncomfortable, I felt so bad. I feel like Nina and I were received quite differently during our time in Beijing. There were some times where we both were sort of targeted in that way, where it was like, oh, let's take a photo with both of you. But most of the time it really was just Nina being singled out. And I think that's mostly because like she had braids at the time, so people like might have associated that with her like being black or being African. To be really honest with you, I kind of had a little bit of an identity crisis during the trip because I was really wondering, like, in that context, was I legible as black? And if I wasn't legible as black, what does that mean about me? What does that mean about how I'm perceived by the world? So that was unsettling because it sort of brought up for me like a lot of insecurities I've had really my whole life about being multiracial and people not recognizing that like I belong to my family, that I belong to my black family members because I do have a lighter complexion. Obviously that's a hell of a thing to complain about because the fact that I am quote unquote ethnically ambiguous affords me so many privileges as I move through the world. So this is not to negate that at all. So I want to hit on some highlights of these trips because honestly like we had so much freaking fun. In Beijing, when we went to the Summer Palace, I was just so taken aback by how gorgeous it was. We were traveling in the winter time, so everything was like frozen and snowing, and it was just so breathtaking. We were also in Beijing for New Year's, which is really funny because obviously like Chinese people have Chinese New Year, so they don't celebrate like this sort of Americanized New Year that we have, but we were still able to find places to celebrate. And we went to this club called The Mix, which was so fun. We were literally at this club until like almost 6 in the morning. That was one of those epic New Years that I'll just never ever forget. In Seoul, 2 of the highlights were, 1, the food. The freaking food went so
Hard.
oh my god, like for no reason. Korean food does something to me. Every single meal slapped. I had the best food that I've ever had in my entire life in Seoul. Learning about the history of Korea. Korea has such a rich history that I honestly knew very little about before I went. Learning about the Korean War and how it was a proxy war, but also a civil war and all the nuances of that, and how Korea has really had to deal with like so much imperialism. Okay, so for the last part of this video, I'm going to spill the tea that I alluded to at the beginning. Everything that you just heard, now put that in the context of Miss Rona. We were in Beijing, just miles away from Wuhan, when COVID started. This is not a drill. So we arrived in Beijing on December 28th. 1 week into our trip in Beijing, Nina and I started getting text messages from our parents like, hey, something funky is going on in Wuhan. Obviously, Beijing is quite far away from Wuhan. So we told them that there was nothing to worry about, we were fine. After 2.5 or so weeks in Beijing, we flew to Seoul. And by the time we landed in Seoul, COVID had become breaking international news. And while we were in Seoul, the first case of COVID was reported. But I followed the situation very closely once I got back to the States because I knew if it was that easy for us to just move around so freely that other people were probably doing the same thing, and that whatever was going on in Wuhan that we were still learning about was going to very easily spread. And shortly after we got back, the conversation around travel bans started to occur. So honestly, we were so fortunate that we didn't get stuck, you know, so far away from our families in like Seoul or Beijing. Can you imagine? Literally right before our senior year, what if we gotten stuck and we weren't able to get back? It was just such like a singular life-changing experience, and I'm happy that at least we got to have that, even though it's really sad right now in quarantine and like not really seeing people and being on the down low. I feel like I have those memories to hold on to and to like push me through a little bit because I know I really lived it up before the world shut down. But yes, that's all that I have for you all. I hope that you learned something. I hope that this video was enjoyable for you. I work really hard on these videos, so if you can give me a like, give me a little subscribe, you know, a little something, I wouldn't be mad about it. I'm just saying. All right, y'all, I will see you again on Thursday. Until then, take care. Bye. Oh, fuck. Okay, bye.